"Until her next move stunned everyone, I need a helper and you need shelter," said the lonely cowboy. Sarah Mitchell's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. The old station wagon beneath her made a coughing sound that sent a wave of panic through her chest. Not now, she thought desperately. Please, not now. She had been driving for 3 days straight, stopping only when absolutely necessary for gas, bathroom breaks, and the cheapest fast food she could find. Her body ached from sitting in the same position for so long, and her eyes burned from exhaustion and tears she refused to let fall in front of her children. In the back seat, 7-year-old Emma clutched her worn, stuffed rabbit and stared out the window with eyes that seemed far too old for her age. Beside her, 5-year-old Tyler had finally fallen asleep after hours of asking when they would stop, when they could go home, and why Mommy looked so sad, bland. Sarah glanced at them in the rearview mirror and felt her heart break all over again. They deserved so much better than this. They deserved a real home, stability, and a childhood free from fear. The car made another terrible sound like metal grinding against metal, and then the engine simply died. Sarah guided the vehicle to the side of the empty highway, her hands shaking as she turned the key again and again. Nothing happened. The engine was completely dead. She pressed her forehead against the steering wheel and took a deep breath, fighting the urge to scream or cry or both. "Mommy? Why did we stop?" Emma's quiet voice came from the back seat. Sarah forced herself to smile as she turned to face her daughter. "The car is just tired, sweetheart. It needs a little rest, just like we do." Emma didn't look convinced, but she nodded anyway. She had learned not to ask too many questions over the past few months. That knowledge made Sarah feel like the worst mother in the world. They were somewhere in Montana, that much Sarah knew. She had been heading west without any real destination in mind, just putting as much distance as possible between them and Ohio, between them and Richard, between them and the life that had slowly been crushing her spirit for the past 8 years. Sarah pulled out her phone and saw that she had barely any signal. Even if she did, who would she call? Her parents had passed away years ago, and her sister had made it clear she didn't want to get involved in Sarah's marital problems. As if years of verbal attacks, broken promises, and escalating violence were simply problems that could be solved with better communication. She checked her wallet. $30 and some change. That was all the money she had in the world. She had cleaned out her small savings account before leaving, but most of that money had gone to gas and food for the journey. The restraining order she had filed had cost money too, though Richard had laughed when he was served with the papers. "A piece of paper won't keep me away from my family," he had told her over the phone, his voice carrying that dangerous edge she knew too well. Sarah looked out at the landscape surrounding them. Rolling plains stretched in every direction, golden grass swaying in the wind beneath a sky so big it made her feel impossibly small. The sun was getting lower, painting everything in shades of orange and pink. It would be dark soon, and she had no idea what to do. That's when she saw it. In the distance, maybe half a mile away, stood a ranch house. It was a simple structure, weathered by years of harsh weather, but it looked solid and real. Next to it stood a large red barn and several smaller outbuildings. She could see fencing stretching across the property and what looked like cattle grazing in the distance. Sarah's first instinct was to stay in the car and wait for someone to drive by. But the highway had been empty for the last hour, and who knew when another vehicle might pass. Her children were hungry. She could see a few granola bars and a half-empty bottle of water in the front seat, but that wouldn't be enough. Tyler would wake up soon, and he would be cranky and scared. She made a decision. "Emma, honey, I need you to wake up your brother. We're going to take a little walk." "Where are we going?" "To that house over there. We're going to ask if someone can help us with the car." The walk across the open field felt longer than half a mile. Sarah carried their small bag of belongings while Emma held Tyler's hand. The grass was tall enough to brush against the children's legs, and the wind carried a chill that made Sarah wish they had warmer jackets. Tyler whined about being tired and hungry, and Sarah kept murmuring reassurances she didn't quite believe herself. As they got closer to the ranch, Sarah could see that the property had seen better days. The fence needed repairs in several places, paint was peeling from the house, and the yard was overgrown with weeds, but there was smoke coming from the chimney, which meant someone was home. Sarah's steps slowed as doubt crept in. What was she doing? She was about to knock on a stranger's door in the middle of nowhere, with her 2 small children looking desperate and homeless. What if whoever lived here was dangerous? What if they called the police? What if somehow Richard had connections that reached even here? But Emma's hand slipped into hers, small and trusting, and Sarah found the courage to keep walking. The porch steps creaked under their weight. Sarah noticed a pair of worn boots by the door, a jacket hanging on a hook, and a water bowl that suggested a dog lived here, though she didn't see one. She raised her hand and knocked, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then she heard heavy footsteps from inside. The door opened and Sarah found herself looking up at a tall man who appeared to be in his late 40s or early 50s. He had the weathered look of someone who spent most of his time outdoors, with deep lines around his eyes and skin tanned from sun exposure. His hair was dark with threads of gray, and he wore faded jeans and a flannel shirt. His expression was guarded, almost suspicious, and Sarah noticed how his hand remained on the edge of the door, as if ready to close it at any moment. His eyes moved from Sarah to the children, and something in his expression shifted slightly, though he still didn't smile. "Can I help you?" His voice was rough, like he didn't use it much. Sarah's rehearsed words fled from her mind. She stood there, aware of how she must look with her rumpled clothes, unwashed hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, and the dark circles under her eyes. Emma pressed against her side while Tyler peeked out from behind her legs. "I'm sorry to bother you," Sarah began, hating how her voice shook. "Our car broke down on the highway. I was wondering if you might have a phone I could use, or if you know anyone who might be able to help." The man studied her for a long moment. His gaze moved to her face, and she wondered if he could see the fading bruise near her temple that she had tried to cover with makeup. His eyes dropped to her wrists, where finger-shaped marks were barely visible beneath her sleeves. "How long have you been driving?" he asked. The question surprised her. We've been on the road for a few days. Where are you headed?" Sarah hesitated. "West. Just west." He nodded slowly, as if this answer told him more than she had intended to reveal. They stood there in silence, Sarah's hopes slowly dying as she prepared for him to turn them away. Then Tyler started to cry. "Mommy, I'm hungry." The sound of her son's voice breaking seemed to make up the man's mind. He stepped back and opened the door wider. "Come in," he said simply. "I'll make some coffee and we can figure out what to do about your car." Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes at this simple kindness. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." As they stepped inside the ranch house, Sarah noticed that while the exterior needed work, the inside was clean, if sparse and masculine. There was a living room with a worn leather couch, a fireplace with a few photographs on the mantel, and a small kitchen visible through an open doorway. Everything looked functional but lonely, as if the house was waiting for more life to fill its empty spaces. The man gestured toward the kitchen table. "Sit down. You look like you're about to fall over." Sarah sank into one of the wooden chairs gratefully while Emma and Tyler pressed close to her sides. The man moved around the kitchen with efficient movements, starting a pot of coffee and pulling items from the refrigerator. "I'm making sandwiches for the kids," he said without turning around. "They look hungry." "You don't have to," Sarah began. "I'm making them anyway," he interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. Within minutes, he placed 2 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in front of Emma and Tyler, along with glasses of milk. The children looked at Sarah for permission, and she nodded. They fell on the food like they were starving, which made Sarah feel another stab of guilt. The man poured 2 cups of coffee and sat down across from Sarah. He pushed 1 cup toward her. "I'm Jack Thornton," he said. "This is my ranch." "Sarah Mitchell," she replied, wrapping her cold hands around the warm cup. "These are my children, Emma and Tyler. I'm sorry for intruding like this." Jack shook his head. "Nearest town is 20 miles from here. Not much traffic on that highway, especially this time of day." "You did the right thing." They sat in silence for a moment, and Sarah could feel Jack studying her. She kept her eyes on her coffee, afraid that if she met his gaze, he would see too much. "How bad is it?" Jack finally asked, his voice quiet. Sarah's head snapped up. "What?" "Whatever you're running from," he said simply. "How bad is it?" Sarah's throat tightened. She wanted to lie, to make up a story about a job opportunity out west or visiting relatives. But something about Jack's steady gaze and the way he had welcomed them without judgment made her want to tell the truth, or at least part of it. "Bad enough that I had to leave everything behind," she whispered. "Bad enough that I drove 3 days with almost no money and no plan just to get away." Jack nodded slowly, and Sarah saw understanding in his eyes. Not pity, which she couldn't have borne, but recognition. "The car?" he asked. "I don't know what's wrong with it. It just died. I'll take a look tomorrow, first light." "Too dark now." He paused, then seemed to make a decision. "There's a guest house out back. Small, but it's clean. You and the kids can stay there tonight. We'll figure out the rest in the morning." Sarah stared at him in disbelief. We can't impose like that. You don't even know us." "No, I don't," Jack agreed, "but I know what it looks like when someone has nowhere else to go. And I know it's going to be cold tonight. Those kids need a warm place to sleep." Tears finally spilled down Sarah's cheeks. She couldn't remember the last time someone had shown her simple human kindness without expecting anything in return. "Thank you," she managed to say. "I don't know how to thank you." Jack stood up and carried his coffee cup to the sink. "No thanks necessary. Like I said, we'll figure things out in the morning." As Sarah tucked her children into clean beds in the small guest house that night, listening to them breathe deeply in real sleep for the first time in days, she allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Maybe, just maybe, they had found a place where they could finally be safe. What she didn't know was that the lonely cowboy in the main house was thinking similar thoughts, wondering if maybe these unexpected visitors were exactly what his empty ranch and his empty life had been waiting for. Jack Thornton woke before dawn, as he had every day for the past 30 years. The habit was so deeply ingrained that he no longer needed an alarm clock. His body simply knew when the sun was about to rise. He lay in bed for a moment, staring at the ceiling and the gray light filtering through his curtains, and remembered that he wasn't alone on the ranch anymore. The thought made him uneasy. He had gotten used to silence, to having only the cattle and the occasional visit from ranch hands to break up his solitude. After Margaret died 5 years ago, he had slowly let people drift away. Friends stopped calling when he never answered. His brother stopped visiting when Jack made it clear he wanted to be left alone. Even his housekeeper had quit 6 months ago, frustrated by his gruff manner and unwillingness to engage in conversation. Now there was a woman and 2 children sleeping in his guest house, and Jack wasn't sure how he felt about that. He had acted on instinct last night, unable to turn away a mother with hungry children and fear in her eyes. But now, in the cold light of morning, he wondered if he had made a mistake. He pulled on his jeans and a clean shirt, splashed water on his face, and headed to the kitchen. Coffee first, then he would check on the car. With luck, it would be something simple, and they could be on their way by afternoon. Life would return to normal. Except Jack wasn't entirely sure he wanted normal anymore. The house had felt different last night, with voices in it, with the sound of children laughing when Tyler discovered a collection of old toy horses in the guest house. For a few hours, the ranch had felt alive again. Jack was pouring his second cup of coffee when he heard a soft knock on the back door. He opened it to find Sarah standing there, looking uncertain. She had changed into clean clothes, though they were wrinkled from being packed in a bag. Her hair was pulled back neatly, and she had scrubbed her face clean. In the morning light, Jack could see that she was younger than he had first thought, probably in her early 30s, with hazel eyes that held both determination and exhaustion. "I'm sorry if I'm bothering you," Sarah said quickly. "I wanted to thank you again for letting us stay, and to ask if there's anything I can do to help. Chores, cooking, anything. I don't want to be a burden." Jack stepped aside to let her in. "Coffee?" "Yes, please," Sarah said gratefully. They sat at the kitchen table, the same seats they had occupied the night before. Jack noticed that Sarah's hands were rough and calloused, not the hands of someone unused to hard work. She saw him looking and self-consciously tucked them into her lap. "I worked as a waitress for years," she explained, "before I had Emma. Then I mostly stayed home with the kids, but I took cleaning jobs when I could. I'm not afraid of hard work, Mr. Thornton." "Jack," he corrected, "and I never thought you were afraid of work." "I can see it in your hands." Sarah looked surprised, then gave him a small smile. It transformed her face, making her look younger and less burdened. "I'll go check on your car after breakfast," Jack said. "But I should be honest with you. If it needs major repairs, the nearest mechanic is in town, and it might take days to get parts. Could be expensive, too." Sarah's face fell. "I see. I appreciate you looking at it anyway." "Where were you planning to go?" Jack asked. "You said west, but that covers a lot of territory." Sarah wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "I don't have a specific destination. I was just trying to get as far away as possible from Ohio, from my ex-husband." The words hung in the air between them. Jack waited, giving her space to continue if she wanted to. "He's not a good man," Sarah said quietly. "I stayed too long. I made excuses. I thought things would get better, that if I just tried harder, loved better, kept the house cleaner, made better dinners, didn't talk back, but nothing was ever enough. It just kept getting worse." Jack's jaw tightened. He had suspected as much from the fear in her eyes and the marks on her skin. "You got a restraining order?" Sarah looked up sharply. "How did you know?" "Saw a copy of papers sticking out of your bag last night when you were getting the kids settled. Didn't read it, but I recognized what it was." Jack took a sip of his coffee. "Does he know where you are?" "No. At least I don't think so. I was careful. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, and I paid cash for everything, but Richard, he's persistent, and he has friends, people who owe him favors. I'm afraid he'll find us eventually. Not if you don't want him to, Jack said firmly. Montana's a big state, and this ranch is pretty isolated. Most people around here mind their own business. Sarah looked at him with something like hope in her eyes. You mean we could stay for a little while? Jack hadn't meant to suggest that, but now that the words were out there, he found himself considering it seriously. The ranch was falling apart. He needed help, but he couldn't afford to pay ranch hands the wages they deserved. The house was a mess, the paperwork was months behind, and he could barely keep up with the daily tasks of running the property. I have a proposition, Jack said slowly, the idea forming as he spoke. I need a helper, and you need shelter. My housekeeper quit 6 months ago, and this place has gone downhill since then. I'm behind on everything, cooking, cleaning, bookkeeping, basic maintenance. I can't pay much, but I can give you room and board for you and the kids, plus a small wage, cash if you prefer. No questions asked about your past. Sarah stared at him in disbelief. You would do that? You don't even know us. I know you're running from something bad. I know you're willing to work, and I know those kids deserve a safe place to stay. Jack shrugged. Besides, I need the help. This ranch used to run smooth as clockwork when Margaret was alive. She kept everything organized. After she died, I let it all go to pieces. Margaret was your wife? Jack nodded. 5 years ago this March. I'm sorry, Sarah said softly. That must have been terrible. It was. Still is, some days. Jack stood up and refilled his coffee cup, uncomfortable with the emotion that had crept into his voice. Point is, the ranch needs work, and you need a place to stay. Seems like it could work out for both of us. You can stay in the guest house, do what you can around here, and save up some money. When you're ready to move on, you'll have a nest egg to start over somewhere. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, and Jack wondered if he had offended her somehow. Then he saw tears gathering in her eyes. Why are you being so kind to us? She asked, her voice breaking. You don't know anything about me. I could be lying about everything. Could be, Jack agreed. But I don't think you are. And even if you were, those kids aren't lying. They're scared and tired, and they need stability. If I can provide that for a while, seems like the right thing to do. Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I accept, and I promise you won't regret it. I'll work hard. I'll earn my keep. I'm sure you will, Jack said. Now, how about some breakfast? Then I'll show you around the ranch, and we can figure out a routine that works. Over the next few hours, Sarah got her first real look at the Thornton Ranch. Jack gave her a tour while Emma and Tyler tagged along, their eyes wide with wonder at the horses, cattle, and wide-open spaces. The property was larger than Sarah had realized, spanning several hundred acres of grazing land with a mix of cattle and a few horses. Jack explained that he ran a small beef cattle operation, selling to local buyers. It wasn't making much profit these days, but it kept him busy and paid the bills. Barely. He showed her the barn, which was in decent shape, and the various outbuildings, some of which were falling apart. When they returned to the main house, Jack led Sarah inside and showed her the state of things. The kitchen was functional but dirty, with dishes piled in the sink and a film of grease on the stove. The living room was cluttered with newspapers, empty coffee cups, and general neglect. Upstairs, bedrooms sat unused and dusty. It's not pretty, Jack admitted, looking embarrassed for the first time. I know it's bad. I just stopped caring about most of this after Margaret died. Sarah surveyed the mess with the practiced eye of someone who had spent years managing a household. It's nothing that can't be fixed with some elbow grease and organization. If you have cleaning supplies, I can start today. You just got here, Jack protested. You should rest. I've been resting for 3 days in that car, Sarah countered. I need to move to do something useful. Please, let me start earning my keep. Jack nodded slowly. Supplies are under the kitchen sink. But pace yourself. This mess didn't happen overnight, and it doesn't need to be fixed overnight either. Sarah spent the rest of the day cleaning, while Emma and Tyler explored the area around the guest house under Jack's watchful eye. He set them up with some old toys he found in the barn and taught them how to feed the chickens, keeping them safely occupied while their mother worked. By evening, the kitchen gleamed. Sarah had scrubbed every surface, organized the pantry, and even started a stew for dinner using ingredients she found in the refrigerator and cabinets. When Jack came in from his work outside, he stopped in the doorway and stared. I can't remember the last time this kitchen looked this clean, he said quietly. Sarah smiled, looking tired but satisfied. It's a start. Tomorrow I'll tackle the living room, if that's okay." They ate dinner together that night, all four of them around the kitchen table. Emma and Tyler chattered about the chickens and the horses, their fear from the previous days beginning to fade. Jack found himself almost smiling at their enthusiasm, answering their questions about ranch life with more patience than he had shown anyone in years. After dinner, Sarah helped clean up, and then took the children back to the guest house for bed. Jack sat alone in his newly clean kitchen, listening to the silence. But it felt different now, less oppressive and more peaceful. Over the next few weeks, a routine developed. Sarah woke early and prepared breakfast and spent her days working on the house and helping with lighter ranch chores. She had a natural talent for organization, and slowly the chaos of Jack's life began to transform into order. She tackled one room at a time, cleaning, organizing, and making lists of repairs that needed to be done. One afternoon, while going through a pile of paperwork Jack had been ignoring, Sarah discovered something troubling. "Jack," she said, finding him in the barn. "Can we talk about your accounting?" Jack looked wary. "What about it?" "I think there are some errors. Big ones. You've been overpaying your feed supplier for months, and your tax estimates are way off. Have you been doing your own bookkeeping?" "Tried to," Jack admitted. "Never been good with numbers. Margaret used to handle all that." Sarah bit her lip. "Would you let me take a look at everything? I used to help my father with his small business before he died. I'm pretty good with bookkeeping." Jack hesitated. Letting Sarah clean and cook was one thing, but giving her access to his financial records felt different, more vulnerable somehow. But when he looked at her earnest face, he found himself nodding. "All right, do what you can." What Sarah discovered over the next few days shocked her. Jack wasn't just barely making ends meet, he was slowly going broke. Years of poor record-keeping, missed deductions, and simple accounting errors had put him in a precarious financial position. But she also saw potential. The ranch had good bones, and with better management it could be profitable again. She presented her findings to Jack one evening after the children were asleep. She had prepared detailed charts and spreadsheets, showing him exactly where his money was going and where he was losing it unnecessarily. Jack listened in silence, his face growing more troubled as she explained. When she finished, he sat back in his chair and ran a hand through his hair. "I knew things were bad," he said, "but I didn't realize how bad. I've been letting this place slide for too long." "It's not too late to fix it," Sarah said quickly. "You just need better systems in place. I can help with that, if you'll let me." Jack looked at her for a long moment. "Why are you doing this? You could just do the basic cleaning and cooking, collect your pay, and mind your own business." Sarah met his gaze steadily. "'Cause you gave me and my children a safe place when we had nowhere else to go. Because you didn't ask questions or judge me. Because this ranch deserves better than to slowly fall apart. And because I want to help. You've given me more than shelter, Jack. You've given me a purpose again." Something shifted between them in that moment, a mutual respect and understanding that went deeper than their practical arrangement. Jack nodded slowly. "All right, then. Show me what needs to be done." As Sarah began implementing her plans to streamline the ranch's operations, Emma and Tyler continued to settle into ranch life. Emma helped her mother with cooking and lighter chores, while Tyler followed Jack around like a shadow, asking endless questions about everything. Jack found himself growing fond of the boy, teaching him to rope fence posts and identify different types of cattle. Late one night, Sarah found Jack sitting on the porch, staring out at the dark fields. "Can't sleep?" she asked softly. "Sometimes I come out here and talk to Margaret," Jack admitted. "Tell her about my day." Sounds foolish, I know. "It's not foolish," Sarah said, sitting down beside him. "It means you loved her very much." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds of the ranch. "I think she'd like you," Jack said finally. "Margaret always said this place needed more life in it, more laughter. She'd be happy to see kids running around again, hear voices in the house." Sarah felt her throat tighten with emotion. "I think she'd be proud of you for helping us." Jack turned to look at her, and in the moonlight, Sarah saw something in his eyes that made her heart skip. It wasn't just kindness anymore. It was something deeper, something that both thrilled and terrified her. Before either of them could speak, they heard a car engine in the distance. Jack immediately tensed. "Expecting someone?" Sarah asked, fear creeping into her voice. "No," Jack said, standing up. "Nobody comes out here this late unless something's wrong." As headlights appeared on the long driveway leading to the ranch, Sarah felt her blood run cold. She knew with absolute certainty that her brief peace was about to be shattered. Richard had found them. Sarah's legs felt frozen to the porch floor as the headlights grew brighter, cutting through the darkness like searchlights. Her mind raced through 1,000 terrible possibilities. How had Richard found them? Had someone seen them? Had she made a mistake somewhere along the way? Her breath came in, short, panicked gasps, as she watched the vehicle approach. Jack noticed her terror immediately. He placed a steady hand on her shoulder, his voice calm and firm. "Go inside, wake the kids, and get them into the back bedroom. The one with no windows facing the driveway. Lock the door and don't come out until I tell you it's safe." "Jack, if it's Richard—" "I said go," Jack repeated, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Now." Sarah ran inside on shaking legs, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. She burst into the guest house and scooped up Tyler from his bed, then shook Emma awake as gently as she could while panic clawed at her insides. "Mommy, what's wrong?" Emma asked, instantly alert with the instinct of a child who had learned to sense danger. "We need to go to the main house, quickly and quietly," Sarah whispered. "Don't ask questions right now, sweetheart. Just trust me." She herded both children across the dark yard and into the main house, practically carrying Tyler while Emma held tight to her hand. They made it to the back bedroom just as she heard a car door slam outside. Sarah locked the door, pushed a dresser in front of it, and pulled both children close to her on the floor, away from any windows. "Is it Daddy?" Tyler asked in a small, frightened voice. The word Daddy made Sarah's stomach turn. Richard had never been a real father to these children. He had been a source of fear, of walking on eggshells, of hiding in their rooms when his voice got loud and his footsteps got heavy. "I don't know, baby," Sarah whispered, stroking his hair. "But Mr. Jack is going to make sure we're safe. We just need to be very quiet, okay?" Outside, Jack stood on the porch steps, his posture relaxed but alert. Years of dealing with difficult situations on the ranch had taught him how to project calm authority. The vehicle that pulled up was a newer pickup truck, not the kind of car he would expect someone from Ohio to be driving across the country. As the driver's door opened, Jack's hand moved closer to his side where he kept a knife on his belt. A man stepped out, and Jack immediately assessed him. Mid-50s, wearing a sheriff's department jacket, with the careful movements of someone in law enforcement. Not the ex-husband, then. Jack felt some of the tension leave his shoulders, but he remained cautious. "Evening," the man called out. "I'm Sheriff Tom Bradley. Sorry to come by so late. I'm looking for a Jack Thornton." "You found him," Jack replied, not moving from the porch. "What can I do for you, Sheriff?" The sheriff walked closer, and in the porch light, Jack could see his weathered face and friendly eyes. "Nothing bad, I promise. I got a call from my wife about an hour ago. She's the one who runs the food bank in town. She mentioned that someone matching your description came by today with a woman and 2 kids picking up some supplies. My wife noticed the woman seemed pretty nervous, kept looking over her shoulder. When I saw the car registration was from Ohio, I thought I'd better check in, make sure everything's all right out here." Jack's estimation of the sheriff went up several notches. Not many law enforcement officers would drive out to a remote ranch late at night just to check on someone's welfare. "Everything's fine?" Jack said carefully. "I've got some folks staying with me temporarily. They're helping out around the ranch." Sheriff Bradley nodded slowly. "Mind if I ask their names?" "Just for my records." Jack hesitated. He didn't know if giving out Sarah's name would somehow put her in danger, but lying to the sheriff seemed like a bad idea too. Before he could answer, the front door opened and Sarah stepped out onto the porch. Jack noticed she had positioned herself where she could run back inside quickly if needed. "I'm Sarah Mitchell," she said, her voice stronger than Jack expected. "Those are my children, Emma and Tyler. We're staying here and working for Mr. Thornton." The sheriff studied her face, and Jack saw recognition dawn in his eyes. Not personal recognition, but the kind that comes from years of seeing people in trouble. "Ma'am, are you here of your own free will?" the sheriff asked gently. "Yes," Sarah said firmly. "Completely. Anyone looking for you that I should know about?" "My ex-husband, Richard Mitchell, from Cleveland, Ohio. I have a restraining order against him. He's threatened to come after me and take the children. That's why I left the state." Sheriff Bradley pulled out a small notebook. "Has he made specific threats?" "Yes." "Multiple times?" "The police in Ohio have records of all of it." He said the restraining order was just a piece of paper, that it wouldn't stop him from getting his family back. He doesn't see what he did as wrong. He thinks I'm his property. The sheriff wrote everything down, his expression neutral but sympathetic. "Do you have a copy of the restraining order?" "In my bag inside. I can get it." "That would be helpful. And, Mr. Thornton, how long have they been staying here?" "About a month now," Jack said. "They needed help. I needed help running the ranch. It's working out fine." The sheriff looked between them, seeming to weigh something in his mind. Finally, he put away his notebook. "All right. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a note in our system that Sarah Mitchell and her children are residing at this address under Mr. Thornton's employment. I'll also flag Richard Mitchell's name, so if anyone comes around asking questions or if he shows up in our county, we'll know about it immediately. I'll need that copy of the restraining order so I can file it with our court as well. That way it's enforceable here in Montana. Sarah felt tears of relief spring to her eyes. You would do that? Ma'am, I've been sheriff in this county for 20 years. I've seen too many situations like yours end badly because someone fell through the cracks. I'm not going to let that happen here. It turned to Jack. You have a way to contact me quickly if there's trouble? Phone in the house and I've got a radio in the barn that reaches the emergency frequency. Good. I'm going to give you my personal cell number too. You see anyone suspicious hanging around? Anyone asking questions in town about a woman and kids from Ohio? You call me immediately, day or night. The sheriff pulled out a business card and handed it to Jack, then gave another to Sarah. Sarah took the card with shaking hands. Thank you, Sheriff. You don't know what this means to us. I think I do, the sheriff said kindly. Now, I'm going to need some information from you for my report. Full names, birth dates, last known address in Ohio, details about the ex-husband, and that restraining order. Can we sit down somewhere and go through it all? They spent the next hour at Jack's kitchen table while Sarah provided all the information the sheriff needed. She told him about the years of escalating problems, the final incident that had pushed her to get the restraining order, and Richard's increasingly aggressive behavior when she had tried to leave. The sheriff listened without judgment, taking detailed notes and asking clarifying questions. Emma and Tyler had fallen asleep in the back bedroom, exhausted from their scare. Jack made coffee and sat quietly, listening and occasionally adding a detail about Sarah's work on the ranch. When the sheriff finally closed his notebook, he looked at Sarah with genuine concern. You did the right thing leaving, and you did the right thing coming to a place where you could get support. A lot of people in your situation try to do it completely alone, and that's when things go wrong. I got lucky, Sarah said, glancing at Jack. Mr. Thornton took a chance on us. Well, Jack's always been one of the good ones, the sheriff said, standing up. He and Margaret used to host barbecues for half the county. This ranch was the heart of the community before things got hard. It's good to see life coming back to this place. Jack walked the sheriff out to his truck. At the vehicle, Sheriff Bradley turned and spoke in a low voice. You know what you're getting into here, Jack. If the ex-husband does show up, things could get complicated. Legally complicated, maybe even dangerous. I know, Jack said simply. But those kids need stability, and Sarah needs a safe place to get back on her feet. I've got the space and the need for help. Seems like a fair trade. The sheriff studied him for a moment. You care about them already, don't you? Jack didn't answer immediately. Did he care about them? A month ago, he had been alone and planning to stay that way. Now, the thought of Sarah and the kids leaving left a hollow feeling in his chest. They're good people, Jack finally said. They deserve better than what they've been through. That they do, the sheriff agreed. You take care of them and you call me if you need anything. I mean that. After the sheriff left, Jack found Sarah still sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the business card in her hands. She looked up when he came in, her eyes red from crying. I'm sorry, she said immediately. I brought my problems to your door. The sheriff coming here, having to give statements. This isn't what you signed up for. Jack pulled out a chair and sat down across from her. Sarah, listen to me. You didn't bring problems to my door. You brought solutions. This ranch was dying before you got here. The house was a mess, the books were a disaster, and I was just going through the motions of living. In 1 month, you've turned things around. The place looks better than it has in years. You found accounting errors that were costing me thousands of dollars, and those kids of yours have reminded me what it feels like to have purpose beyond just getting through another day. But Richard? Richard is a problem, yes. But he's not your fault. And he's not something you have to handle alone anymore. Jack leaned forward, his voice firm. Tomorrow, I'm going to make some calls. I've got a friend who's a lawyer in town. We're going to make sure all your paperwork is in order, get everything filed properly here in Montana. I'm also going to talk to my ranch hands, let them know to keep an eye out for strangers, and I'm going to teach you how to shoot. Sarah's eyes widened. Shoot? A gun, yes. Everyone who lives on a ranch should know basic firearm safety and how to protect themselves. Margaret was a crack shot. It's a practical skill out here. He paused. I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying it because you need to feel like you have some control, some way to protect yourself and your kids if you need to. Sarah nodded slowly. You're right. I've spent so long feeling helpless. I don't want to feel that way anymore. Good. We'll start with the basics tomorrow. Jack stood up. Now, you should get some sleep. It's late, and those kids will be up early. Sarah stood too, but before Jack could leave, she reached out and touched his arm. Jack, why are you doing all this? Really? Jack looked down at her hand on his arm, then met her eyes. The kitchen light cast shadows across her face, highlighting the determination that had brought her across the country with nothing but hope and her children's safety in mind. He saw strength there that she probably didn't even recognize in herself yet. Because when Margaret was sick, people helped us, Jack said quietly. Neighbors brought food. Friends sat with her when I had to work the ranch. The community rallied around us. After she died, I shut everyone out. I was angry and hurt, and I pushed away every bit of kindness people tried to show me. I've been living half a life for 5 years, Sarah. Then you and those kids showed up on my porch, and something woke up in me that I thought was dead. Maybe this is the universe's way of giving me a chance to pay forward all that kindness I refused before. Or maybe it's just the right thing to do. Either way, you're not alone anymore. None of you are. A tear rolled down Sarah's cheek. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just get some rest. After Sarah collected her sleeping children and returned to the guest house, Jack stood in his quiet kitchen and realized that the silence didn't feel oppressive anymore. It felt peaceful, full of potential. He thought about Sheriff Bradley's question, did he care about them already? The answer was becoming clearer every day. Over the next 2 weeks, Jack kept his promises. He took Sarah to meet his lawyer friend, who helped file additional protective orders in Montana and ensured all of Sarah's documentation was properly registered in the state. He introduced her to his ranch hands, 2 part-time workers named Miguel and Dan who had been with him for years, and explained the situation. Both men immediately pledged to keep watch and report any strangers in the area. True to his word, Jack also began teaching Sarah how to shoot. They started with basic safety, then moved to a rifle and eventually a handgun. Sarah was a natural, her hands steady and her focus intense. Jack realized that she approached shooting the same way she approached everything else, with determination and a refusal to be afraid. Emma and Tyler were thriving too. Emma had started helping Sarah with more complex tasks around the ranch, learning to bake bread and organize the office. Tyler followed Jack everywhere, soaking up knowledge about ranching like a sponge. The boy had a natural way with animals, and even the most stubborn cattle seemed to calm around him. One evening, as they all sat down to dinner together, a routine that had become sacred, Emma asked a question that made everyone pause. Jack, can we stay here forever? Jack looked at Sarah, who had frozen with her fork halfway to her mouth. The question hung in the air, heavy with implications and unspoken feelings. Well, Jack said carefully, that depends on a lot of things, Emma. But I can tell you this, you're welcome here for as long as you need to be. This ranch feels like a home again with you all in it. Emma smiled, satisfied with the answer. Tyler cheered, and Sarah met Jack's eyes across the table, something passing between them that neither was quite ready to name yet. But it was there, growing stronger every day, a connection built on mutual respect, shared purpose, and the slow healing of 2 wounded hearts. That night, after the children were asleep, Sarah found Jack in the barn checking on a pregnant cow that was due to deliver any day. She stood in the doorway, watching him work with gentle hands, speaking softly to the nervous animal. You're good at this, she said. Being kind, taking care of things. Jack looked up, surprised to see her there, just doing what needs doing. It's more than that, Sarah insisted, walking closer. You've given us more than shelter, Jack. You've given us dignity. You haven't once made me feel like charity or a burden. You've made me feel useful, capable, strong. Do you know how rare that is? Jack stood up, brushing hay from his jeans. You are all those things. I didn't make you anything you weren't already. Maybe. But you saw it when I couldn't see it myself. Sarah took a deep breath. I need to tell you something. Earlier today, I got an email from Richard. I don't know how he got my new address, but he found it somehow. Jack's expression hardened. What did it say? The usual threats. That he's going to find me. That I can't hide forever. That I'm making a mistake. But Jack, for the first time, I wasn't terrified when I read it. I was angry. Angry that he thinks he still has power over me. Angry that he's trying to ruin the peace we've found here. She looked up at him. I'm not running anymore. If he comes here, I'm going to face him. With the law, with the truth, with every ounce of strength I've built up over the past month. I'm done being afraid. Jack felt something fierce and protective rise in his chest. You won't face him alone, I promise you that. What neither of them knew was that Richard had already started his journey west. and the confrontation that would test everything they had built together was coming sooner than they could have imagined. 3 days after Sarah received the threatening email, life on the ranch continued with a careful normalcy that felt fragile, like glass waiting to shatter. Jack had immediately contacted Sheriff Bradley about the message, and the sheriff had assured them that any attempt by Richard to violate the restraining order would result in immediate arrest. But everyone knew that a piece of paper couldn't stop a determined man who believed he owned his family. Jack found himself constantly scanning the horizon, watching for unfamiliar vehicles on the long road leading to the ranch. He kept his rifle closer than usual and made sure Sarah knew where the phone was at all times. Miguel and Dan had been briefed to report anything suspicious, and they took turns making extra passes by the property throughout the day. Despite the underlying tension, Sarah refused to let fear control her life again. She continued her work with even more determination, as if proving to herself that she had made the right choice in standing her ground. She'd transformed the ranch office into an organized command center, with color-coded files, a computer system that actually made sense, and a bookkeeping method that showed Jack exactly where every dollar was going. One morning, while Sarah was in the office reconciling accounts from the previous month, she discovered something that made her sit back in surprise. The ranch had actually made a profit last month for the first time in over a year. It wasn't a huge profit, but it was real money that could go toward repairs and improvements instead of just covering debts. She printed out the financial report and went looking for Jack. She found him in the north pasture with Tyler, teaching the boy how to check fence posts for weakness. Tyler was taking his job very seriously, his small face scrunched up in concentration as he tested each post the way Jack had shown him.
"Jack, can I talk to you for a minute?"
Sarah called out. Jack looked up and saw the papers in her hand. His first thought was that something was wrong, more bad news to deal with. But when he got closer, he saw that Sarah was smiling. "We made money last month," she announced, handing him the report. "Actual profit. Not much, but it's a start." Jack studied the numbers, his eyes widening as he took in what she had accomplished. By renegotiating contracts with suppliers, finding better prices for feed, and implementing a more efficient system for tracking cattle sales, Sarah had managed to turn the ranch's finances around. "This is incredible," Jack said quietly. "I can't remember the last time I saw black numbers at the end of a month." "It gets better," Sarah continued, her excitement building. "If we can maintain this for the next 6 months and maybe expand the cattle operation slightly, you could actually start saving money again. Maybe even hire another full-time ranch hand, which would take some pressure off you and Miguel and Dan." Jack looked at her with something close to awe. "You did all this in just over a month?" "We did it," Sarah corrected. "You gave me the tools and the trust to make changes. I just implemented them." Tyler tugged on Jack's sleeve. "Does this mean we can stay longer?" "I don't want to leave Daisy and the chickens." The innocence of the question hit both adults hard. Jack crouched down to Tyler's level. "Buddy, you can stay as long as your mama wants to stay. This is your home now if you want it to be." Sarah felt her throat tighten with emotion. The word home had taken on new meaning over the past weeks. This ranch, with its wide open spaces and endless sky, felt more like home than anywhere she had lived in years. And Jack, with his quiet strength and unexpected kindness, felt like family. That afternoon, while Emma was helping Sarah prepare dinner and Tyler was napping after his morning in the pasture, Jack received a phone call. It was Dan, one of his ranch hands, calling from town. "Boss, I think you should know something," Dan said, his voice tense. "I'm at the feed store, and there's a guy here asking questions about a woman and 2 kids. Says he's looking for his family, that they might be staying at a ranch somewhere in the area. The description matches Sarah and her kids." Jack's blood ran cold. "What does he look like?" "Tall, maybe 6 feet, dark hair, wearing a nice jacket like city folks wear. He's got an attitude about him, you know, acting all concerned, but there's something off about the way he's asking questions. Pete at the feed store isn't telling him anything, but I figured you'd want to know." "You figured right. Where is he now? Still here? Talking to some other customers?" "I'm keeping an eye on him. Don't let him see you watching. If he heads this direction, call me immediately. I'm going to contact the sheriff." Jack paused. "Dan, thanks for looking out for us." That's what friends do, boss. Be careful." Jack hung up and immediately dialed Sheriff Bradley. While waiting for the sheriff to answer, he saw Sarah through the kitchen window, laughing at something Emma had said while they cooked together. The sight of her happy and relaxed made his decision even clearer. He would protect this family, whatever it took. The sheriff answered on the 3rd ring. "Bradley here. Tom, it's Jack Thornton. We've got a problem. There's a man in town asking questions about Sarah and the kids. My ranch hand says he matches the description of the ex-husband. Where in town? Feed store, last I heard. I'm 10 minutes away. I'll head there now. Jack, you lock down that ranch. Get Sarah and the kids somewhere safe inside, and don't open the door for anyone except me. Understand? Understood. Jack found Sarah in the kitchen and kept his voice calm, not wanting to alarm the children. Sarah, can you come outside for a second? I need to talk to you about something. Sarah saw the tension in his face and immediately followed him onto the porch, closing the door behind them.
What is it? Dan called from town.
There's a man asking questions that match Richard's description. The sheriff is heading there now, but I need you and the kids to stay inside and away from the windows until we know more. All the color drained from Sarah's face. He's here. He actually came. We don't know for sure it's him yet, but we're not taking chances. Jack placed his hands on her shoulders, making her look at him. Sarah, listen to me. You're safe here. We have a plan in place. The sheriff knows what's happening. My ranch hands are watching, and I'm not going to let anything happen to you or those kids. But I need you to stay calm and follow my instructions, okay? Sarah nodded, fighting to control the panic rising in her chest. This was what she had been dreading, but also what she had been preparing for. She had promised herself she wouldn't run again, and she meant it. What do you want me to do? She asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Go inside, get the kids, and take them to the back bedroom, the one we used before. Lock the door and don't come out until I tell you it's safe. I'm going to get my rifle and wait on the porch. Jack, no arguments. Go. Now, Sarah hurried inside and tried to keep her voice casual as she called to Emma and Tyler. Hey guys, let's play a game. We're going to practice our emergency drill, remember? The one where we go to the back bedroom and see how quiet we can be? Emma wasn't fooled. She was too perceptive, too used to reading danger in adult faces. Is it my father? Sarah knelt down and pulled both children close. I don't know, baby, but Mr. Jack and the sheriff are making sure we're safe. We just need to do our part and stay quiet in the back room for a little while, okay? They hurried to the bedroom and Sarah locked the door behind them. She pushed the dresser in front of it again, then gathered her children on the floor. Tyler, not fully understanding but sensing his mother's fear, began to cry softly. Emma held him close, her young face set with determination. It's going to be okay, Emma whispered to her brother. Mr. Jack won't let anything bad happen to us. Sarah was struck by her daughter's faith in Jack. In just over a month, this man had become their protector, their safe harbor, and Emma was right. Jack wouldn't let anything happen to them. Sarah believed that with her whole heart. Outside, Jack positioned himself on the porch with a clear view of the driveway. His rifle rested against the railing, within easy reach, but not obviously threatening. His phone was in his pocket, set to vibrate. Every muscle in his body was tense, ready to react. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Jack's phone finally buzzed. It was Sheriff Bradley. Jack, we got him. He's at the station now. It's definitely Richard Mitchell. What happened? He was still in town asking questions at the diner. When I approached him and asked for identification, he got aggressive, started demanding to know where his wife and kids were, saying he had a right to see them. When I informed him about the restraining order being filed here in Montana and that he was in violation just by being in the county, he tried to push past me to get back to his car. My deputy and I restrained him, and he's now in a cell cooling off. Jack felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. How long can you hold him? Well, that's the interesting part. When we searched him, we found he had a handgun in his vehicle without a proper permit for this state. We also found what looked like surveillance photos of your ranch on his phone. He's been watching the place, probably trying to figure out the best way to approach. Combined with the restraining order violation and some outstanding warrants from Ohio that just popped up in the system, we can hold him for at least 72 hours. After that, he'll have a bail hearing, and given the circumstances, I'm going to recommend he be ordered to leave the state. Thank you, Tom. I mean it. Don't thank me yet. This guy's trouble, Jack. He's not going to give up easy. He kept saying that Sarah is his wife, that those are his children, that he has rights. He doesn't see himself as doing anything wrong. Those are the dangerous ones. I know. We'll be ready. After hanging up, Jack went inside to tell Sarah the news. He found her in the back bedroom, sitting on the floor with both children in her arms. She looked up when he opened the door, her eyes wide with fear and hope. He's in custody, Jack said gently. The sheriff has him at the station. He can't get to you. Sarah burst into tears, all the tension of the past hour releasing at once. Emma and Tyler started crying too, though Tyler didn't fully understand why. Jack sat down on the floor with them and, without thinking about it, gathered all three into his arms. They sat like that for a long time, a makeshift family holding each other in the fading afternoon light. Jack realized with startling clarity that this was what he had been missing for 5 years. Not just company or help around the ranch, but real connection. Love, even, though he wasn't quite ready to name it yet. Eventually, Tyler pulled back and looked up at Jack with teary eyes. "Are you going to make the bad man go away forever?" Jack smoothed the boy's hair back from his forehead. "I'm going to do everything I can to keep you safe. That's a promise." "Like a real dad would do?" Tyler asked innocently. The question hung in the air, and Jack saw Sarah tense, waiting for his response. He thought about Margaret, about the children they had never had, about the empty years he had spent in this house alone. He thought about how Tyler followed him around the ranch with complete trust, how Emma had started calling him Mr. Jack with such affection, how Sarah had brought life back to his world. "Yes," Jack said finally, his voice rough with emotion. "Like a real dad would do." That evening, after the children were finally asleep in the guest house, and Sarah had checked on them 3 times to make sure they were really okay, she found Jack sitting on the porch steps, staring out at the stars. "Can I sit?" she asked. "Of course." They sat in silence for a while, the way they had grown comfortable doing. "Finally," Sarah spoke. "When Tyler asked if you would protect us like a real dad, and you said yes, did you mean it?" Jack turned to look at her. In the moonlight, she looked younger, more vulnerable than the capable woman who had been running his ranch with such efficiency. "I meant it," he said simply. "Sarah, I know this started as a practical arrangement. You needed shelter or I needed help, but somewhere along the way, it became more than that. For me, at least. You and those kids, you've become family. And I protect my family." Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes again. "Jack, I need to tell you something. I'm falling in love with this place, with this life. And I think I'm falling in love with you, too." The words were out before she could stop them, and she immediately felt panic. What if she had misread everything? What if Jack didn't feel the same way? What if she had just made everything awkward? But Jack reached over and took her hand, his calloused fingers wrapping around hers with gentle strength. "I know I'm 20 years older than you. I know I'm rough around the edges and set in my ways. I know I come with a whole ranch full of problems and a past that includes a wife I love deeply. But Sarah, I haven't felt this alive in 5 years. You make me want to be better, do better. And those kids of yours have reminded me what it means to have purpose beyond just surviving each day." "So what are you saying?" Sarah whispered. "I'm saying I'm falling in love with you too. I'm saying I don't want this to be temporary. I'm saying I want you and Emma and Tyler to stay, not as employees or guests, but as family, real family." He paused. "I'm saying I want to adopt those kids legally if you'll let me. I want to give them my name, my protection, everything I have. And when your divorce is final and when you're ready, I want to marry you, not because you need saving, but because you saved me first." Sarah threw her arms around his neck, crying and laughing at the same time. Yes to all of it. They held each other on the porch steps while the Montana stars blazed overhead. 2 broken people who had found healing in the most unexpected place. Inside the guest house, Emma stood at the window, watching them with a small smile. She had known this was coming. She had seen the way Jack looked at her mother, the way her mother smiled when he was around. They were going to be a real family now, the kind Emma had always dreamed of. But their happiness was fragile, and the threat wasn't entirely gone. At the county jail, Richard Mitchell sat in his cell, plotting his next move. He had been caught this time, but he was a patient man when he needed to be, and he had no intention of letting Sarah go. She belonged to him, and he would find a way to get her back. No cowboy and no piece of paper was going to stop him. The real confrontation was still coming, and it would test everything Jack and Sarah had built together. The next morning dawned cold and clear, with frost coating the grass and fence posts like a delicate layer of diamonds. Sarah woke early, as she always did, but this time with a lightness in her heart she hadn't felt in years. Jack's words from the night before echoed in her mind, filling her with hope and something that felt dangerously close to joy. She allowed herself to believe, finally, that maybe her life could be different, that maybe she and her children could have the family they deserved. She was making breakfast when Jack came into the kitchen, his hair still damp from the shower. Their eyes met, and they both smiled, a little shy now in the morning light after their confessions the night before. "Morning," Jack said, his voice warm. "Good morning," Sarah replied, feeling her cheeks flush. "I made extra pancakes. Thought we could all use a good breakfast after yesterday." "Sounds perfect." They were sitting down to eat when Jack's phone rang. It was Sheriff Bradley, and Jack's expression grew serious as he listened. Sarah's stomach tightened with worry. "Understood. Thanks for letting me know, Tom." Jack hung up and looked at Sarah. "Richard made bail this morning." Judge set conditions. He has to stay at least 50 miles away from this property. He can't contact you in any way, and he has to leave Montana within 72 hours. If he violates any of those conditions, he goes straight back to jail with no bail. But he's out, Sarah said, her voice flat. He's out there somewhere. Yes, but Tom has deputies watching him. They'll make sure he leaves the state. Jack reached across the table and took her hand. We're going to get through this. Sarah wanted to believe him, but she knew Richard better than anyone. He didn't follow rules. He didn't respect boundaries. When he wanted something, he took it. Consequences be damned. The restraining order, the bail conditions, the sheriff's warnings, none of it would matter to him. I need to go into town today, Jack said. I have a meeting with a lawyer about starting the adoption paperwork for Emma and Tyler. Do you want to come with me? Or would you rather stay here with the kids? Sarah thought about it. Part of her wanted to hide on the ranch where she felt safest, but another part, the stronger part that had been growing over the past weeks, refused to let fear control her decisions anymore. I'll come with you, she decided. Emma and Tyler can come too. They should be part of this. Besides, I don't want to spend my life jumping at shadows. Jack smiled, pride evident in his eyes. That's my girl. 2 hours later, they were all dressed and heading into town in Jack's truck. Emma and Tyler sat in the back seat, excited about the trip. They rarely left the ranch, and the prospect of seeing town felt like an adventure. Sarah sat in the front next to Jack, trying to ignore the nervous flutter in her stomach every time they passed another vehicle on the road. The lawyer's office was in a small building on Main Street. His name was David Chen, and he had been friends with Jack for over 20 years. Did you remember well the children with a jar of candy he kept on his desk specifically for young visitors? So Jack tells me you want to start adoption proceedings? David said once they were all settled in his office. That's wonderful news. Let me explain how this works in Montana. For the next hour, David walked them through the process. Because Sarah's divorce wasn't final yet, they would need to wait before Jack could legally adopt. However, they could start the preliminary paperwork now, including background checks and home studies. David explained that given the circumstances, Richard's history of threatening behavior and the existing restraining orders, the court would likely move quickly once the divorce was finalized. There's something else we should discuss, David said, his expression growing more serious. Jack mentioned that Richard has been making threats about taking the children. Sarah, have you considered filing for sole custody with supervised visitation only? Given his behavior, I think a court would grant it. Sarah hadn't thought about that. She had been so focused on getting away, on keeping the children safe day by day, that she hadn't considered the long-term legal strategy. What would that mean exactly? She asked. It would mean that if Richard wanted to see Emma and Tyler, it would have to be in a supervised setting, usually a facility designed for that purpose, with trained staff present. I'd have taken them anywhere alone. It would give you and the children protection while still technically allowing him parental rights, which makes it easier to get a court to approve. Sarah looked at Emma, who was listening intently despite playing with a puzzle in the corner with Tyler. Emma had told her mother more than once that she didn't want to see her father ever again. Tyler was too young to fully understand, but he had nightmares about the shouting and the fear. I want sole custody with supervised visitation, Sarah said firmly. I want my children protected by law. Smart decision, David approved. I'll start drawing up the paperwork today. As they were leaving the lawyer's office, Emma tugged on Sarah's hand. Mama, does this mean Mr. Jack is going to be our real dad? Sarah knelt down, so she was eye level with her daughter. If that's what you want, sweetheart. Mr. Jack would very much like to be your dad, but only if you and Tyler want that too. Emma's face broke into a huge smile. I want it. Tyler wants it too. We talked about it last night. Can we call him Dad now instead of Mr. Jack? Sarah looked up at Jack, who had stopped walking and was staring at Emma with an expression of such raw emotion that it made Sarah's heart ache. When we went into this area, Jack crouched down next to Sarah. You can call me whatever feels right to you, Emma, but I would be honored if you and Tyler called me Dad. Emma threw her arms around Jack's neck. Okay, Dad. Tyler, not wanting to be left out, ran over and wrapped his small arms around Jack's leg. Dad. Dad. They stood on the sidewalk of Main Street, this new family embracing, while passers-by smiled at the sight. It was a moment of pure happiness, untainted by fear or worry. But it was also the moment when Richard Mitchell, watching from across the street in his rental car, felt his rage reach a boiling point. He had been following them since they left the ranch, staying back far enough that they wouldn't notice. He had watched them go into the lawyer's office, and though he couldn't hear what was being discussed, he could imagine. That woman was trying to take his children away. She was trying to replace him with some old cowboy who didn't know anything about being a real father. Richard's hands gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. He had tried to do this the legal way, but the system was rigged against him. Everyone believed Sarah's lies about him being dangerous or threatening. They didn't understand that he was just trying to keep his family together. He had never meant to hurt anyone. He just got frustrated sometimes when people didn't listen, when things didn't go the way they should. He watched as Jack Thornton put his hand on Sarah's back, guiding her and the children toward his truck. He watched as Tyler, his son, called that man Dad. The betrayal cut through him like a knife. Richard made a decision then. If the courts wouldn't give him his family back, he would take them back himself. He knew where they were staying now. He knew the layout of the ranch from the surveillance he had done before getting arrested, and he knew that cowboys, for all their supposed toughness, were just men. Men could be dealt with. Back at the ranch that afternoon, Jack was in the barn working on repairing a stall door when Miguel came running in, out of breath. "Boss, we got a problem. There's smoke coming from the north pasture." "Looks like the old hay storage shed is on fire." Jack's blood ran cold. That shed was close to the guest house where Sarah and the children often spent their evenings. He dropped his tools and ran, Miguel right behind him. As they got closer, they could see flames reaching up into the sky, black smoke billowing. "Call the fire department," Jack shouted. "And find Sarah and the kids. Make sure they're safe." Miguel pulled out his phone while Jack ran toward the fire, his mind racing. The shed shouldn't have caught fire on its own. The hay inside was old but dry, and there was no electrical equipment nearby. Unless someone had set it deliberately. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. Richard. Somehow Richard had gotten onto the property. Jack ran back toward the main house, fear pumping through his veins. He had to find Sarah and the children. He had to make sure they were safe. The fire was just a distraction, he was sure of it now. He found Sarah in the kitchen, thankfully, with both children. They had seen the smoke and were preparing to evacuate if necessary. "It's Richard," Jack said without preamble. "I think he set that fire. I need you to get the kids and lock yourselves in the bathroom. It's the most secure room in the house. Don't come out until I come get you, and don't open the door for anyone else. Not even if they say they're from the fire department. Only me or Sheriff Bradley. Understand?" Sarah's face went pale, but she nodded. The strength Jack had come to admire in her showed itself again as she immediately took charge of the children, speaking calmly to keep them from panicking. "Emma, Tyler, we're going to play another game. We're going to see how long we can stay quiet in the bathroom while Dad takes care of the fire. Can you do that for me?" Both children nodded, their eyes wide with fear but trusting their mother completely. Jack waited until he heard the bathroom door lock. Then he grabbed his rifle from the hall closet. He checked that it was loaded and made his way back outside. The volunteer fire department would arrive soon, but until then, he needed to protect his family. He found Richard standing near the barn watching the fire he had set with satisfaction. When he saw Jack approaching with the rifle, he smiled, a cold, calculated smile that made Jack's skin crawl. "You must be the cowboy," Richard said conversationally, as if they were meeting at a social event. "The one who thinks he can steal my family." "Your family has a restraining order against you," Jack said, keeping his voice steady and the rifle pointed at the ground but ready. "You're in violation of your bail conditions. The sheriff is on his way, and you're going back to jail." "I don't think so," Richard replied. "I think I'm going to walk into that house, collect my wife and children, and leave." "You're going to let me because you're smart enough to know that if you try to stop me, someone's going to get hurt, and it won't be me." "You're right that someone's going to get hurt if you try to go into my house," Jack agreed. "But it will be you. I'm not going to let you near them. Sarah and those kids are under my protection now, and I take that responsibility seriously." Richard's smile faded. "She's my wife. Those are my children. You have no legal right to them." "They're not property," Jack said, his anger building. "They're people. People who are terrified of you. People who ran across the country to get away from you. What kind of man makes his own children afraid to sleep at night? What kind of man makes his wife choose between her safety and having a place to live?" "You don't know anything about our relationship," Richard snarled, taking a step forward. "Sarah needs discipline. She needs structure. She was falling apart, making bad decisions, and I was trying to help her. But she wouldn't listen. She never listens." Jack saw the delusion in Richard's eyes, the complete inability to see himself as anything other than the victim. This was a dangerous man, made more dangerous by his conviction that he was in the right. "Here's what's going to happen," Jack said firmly. "You're going to sit down on the ground with your hands where I can see them. You're going to wait for the sheriff to arrive. And then you're going to face the consequences of violating your bail and committing arson on my property. And if I don't, Richard challenged, then I will use this rifle to defend my family and my property. Montana law is very clear about a man's right to protect his home. Now sit down. For a long moment they stared at each other. Jack could see Richard calculating his options, trying to figure out if Jack was bluffing. But Jack had spent 5 years living with grief and regret. He had watched his wife die slowly, unable to save her. He wasn't going to stand by helplessly again while someone he loved was in danger. Richard must have seen the determination in Jack's eyes because he slowly lowered himself to the ground, his hands visible. Just then sirens wailed in the distance, both fire trucks and police cars. Sheriff Bradley arrived first, along with 2 deputies. They immediately took Richard into custody while Jack lowered his rifle with shaking hands. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving him feeling exhausted and slightly sick. "Jack, you okay?" the sheriff asked. "Fine. Sarah and the kids are locked in the bathroom. I need to get them." Jack found them exactly where he had left them. When he knocked on the bathroom door and identified himself, Sarah opened it immediately and threw herself into his arms, Emma and Tyler pressing close. "Is he gone?" Sarah whispered against Jack's chest. "He's gone. The sheriff has him, and this time he won't be getting bail. Arson, violating restraining order, violating bail conditions. He's looking at serious prison time." Sarah pulled back to look at him, tears streaming down her face. "It's really over?" "It's really over," Jack confirmed. "David will make sure the custody case is solid, and with Richard's criminal record now, no judge is going to give him unsupervised access to these kids. You're safe, Sarah. All of you are safe." The volunteer fire department managed to contain the blaze to just the old shed. The damage was limited, and more importantly, no one was hurt. By evening, things had calmed down enough that Jack made his famous chili for dinner, a recipe Margaret had taught him years ago that had become his specialty. They ate together at the kitchen table, the 4 of them, like a real family. Tyler and Emma were subdued, processing the scary events of the day, but they were no longer afraid. They understood now that they were truly safe, that the bad man was gone for good. After dinner, while Jack was helping Emma with a puzzle and Sarah was reading to Tyler, Sheriff Bradley stopped by with an update. "Richard Mitchell has been formally charged with arson, stalking, violation of a restraining order, and violation of bail conditions," the sheriff reported. "The prosecutor is confident he'll be sentenced to at least 3 to 5 years in prison. With his record and the severity of the crimes, the judge denied bail entirely. He's not getting out." Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she hadn't even realized she was carrying. "Thank you, Sheriff, for everything." "Just doing my job, ma'am. Though I have to say you picked a good man in Jack Thornton. Not many people would have handled this situation as well as he did." After the sheriff left, Sarah tucked the children into bed in the guest house. They were both exhausted, emotionally and physically, and they fell asleep quickly. Sarah stood watching them for a long moment, marveling at how peaceful they looked. No tension in their small faces, no fear in their dreams, just peaceful sleep. She found Jack sitting on the porch steps, in what had become their spot for important conversations. She sat down next to him, and he immediately put his arm around her, pulling her close. "Today was terrifying," Sarah said softly. "But you know what I kept thinking while we were locked in that bathroom?" "What?" "That I wasn't alone anymore, that I had someone who would fight for me and my children, that I had found someone who saw us as worth protecting." She looked up at him. "You kept your promise, Jack. You protected us like a real father would, like a real partner would." Jack kissed the top of her head. "I'll always protect you. All of you. That's what family does." 6 months later, on a perfect autumn afternoon, Sarah and Jack stood in front of a judge in the county courthouse. Sarah's divorce had been finalized 2 months earlier, and Richard was serving his sentence in a facility 3 states away. The adoption paperwork for Emma and Tyler had been approved, and today was the day it would become official. Emma stood next to Jack, wearing a new dress that Margaret's sister had sent as a gift when she heard about the adoption. Tyler held Sarah's hand, dressed in a little suit that made him look impossibly grown up. David Chen stood as their lawyer, beaming with pride at this family he had helped create legally. "Mr. Thornton," the judge said, "do you understand that by adopting these children you are taking on all the responsibilities and rights of a parent, that they will be your children in every legal sense?" "I understand, Your Honor," Jack said clearly, "and I accept those responsibilities gladly." "And Emma and Tyler," the judge said, looking at the children kindly, "do you understand that Mr. Thornton will become your legal father?" "Yes, ma'am," Emma said confidently. "He's already our dad. This just makes it official." The judge smiled. "Well said. Then by the power vested in me by the state of Montana, I hereby grant this adoption. Jack Thornton is now the legal father of Emma Thornton and Tyler Thornton. Congratulations to you all." The courtroom, filled with Miguel, Dan, Sheriff Bradley, and several neighbors who had become friends, erupted in applause. Emma and Tyler threw themselves at Jack, who caught them both in a bear hug. Sarah stood watching, tears of joy streaming down her face. That evening, they celebrated at the ranch with a barbecue. It was similar to the ones Jack and Margaret used to host, but different too. This was a new chapter, not a continuation of the old one. Margaret would always be part of Jack's history, but Sarah and the children were his future. As the sun set over the Montana prairie, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, Sarah stood next to Jack, watching their children play with the dogs that now lived on the ranch. Miguel was teaching Tyler how to throw a lasso, while Emma helped Dan set up hay bales for target practice. "You know what?" Sarah said, leaning against Jack's shoulder. "What?" "I used to think that asking for help was weak, that needing someone meant I had failed somehow. But that day when I knocked on your door with nothing but fear and hope, that was the bravest thing I'd ever done. And look what it led to." Jack pulled her closer. "You didn't need me to save you, Sarah. You saved yourself. I just gave you a safe place to land while you figured out how strong you already were." "We saved each other," Sarah corrected softly. "You were drowning in grief and loneliness. I was drowning in fear. And somehow we found each other at exactly the right moment." "Yeah," Jack agreed, watching as Tyler successfully roped a hay bale and did a victory dance. "We did. 2 weeks later, they got married in the same barn where Sarah had once cried in desperation. It was a small ceremony with close friends and family, including Jack's brother, who had driven from Colorado to be there. Emma served as the flower girl and Tyler as the ring bearer, both of them taking their roles very seriously. When the minister asked if anyone objected to the union, Emma stage whispered loudly, "Anyone who objects has to deal with me," which made everyone laugh. As Jack and Sarah exchanged vows, promising to love and support each other through whatever challenges came their way, neither of them could have imagined the journey that had led them here. A broken-down car on a lonely highway. A desperate knock on a stranger's door. A lonely cowboy finding the courage to open his heart again. A frightened mother discovering her own strength. Their story spread through the community, and soon Sarah found herself fielding calls from other women in similar situations. Women who needed help, but didn't know where to turn. Women who were afraid but desperate for change. Working with Jack and the local women's shelter, Sarah established a small program on the ranch, a safe house where women and children could stay temporarily while getting back on their feet. The first guest arrived on a cold November evening, a young woman named Maria with a baby in her arms and fear in her eyes. Sarah met her at the guest house, the same one where she had spent her first night on the ranch, and welcomed her with warm food and warmer words. "You're safe here," Sarah told her, meaning every word. "This is a place where you can breathe, figure things out, and remember who you are beyond the fear." "I know, because I was exactly where you are not that long ago." Maria looked at Sarah with hope beginning to kindle in her eyes. "And you made it through?" Sarah smiled and gestured toward the main house where Jack was helping Emma with homework while Tyler played with the dogs. "Not just through it. I made it to something better than I ever imagined possible. And you will too." As the years passed, the Thornton Ranch became known throughout Montana as a place of healing and second chances. Emma grew into a confident young woman who wanted to become a social worker, inspired by her mother's work. Tyler discovered a talent for training horses and dreamed of running the ranch someday with his father. Sarah's program helped dozens of families find their footing and start new lives. And Jack, the lonely cowboy who had once thought his life was over, found that love and family came in unexpected forms and at unexpected times. On quiet evenings when the work was done and the children were settled, Jack and Sarah would sit on their porch steps and watch the Montana sunset paint the sky. Sometimes they talked about the future, making plans and dreaming dreams. Sometimes they sat in comfortable silence, just grateful to be together. "You know what I realized?" Jack said one evening. "What's that?" "That day you knocked on my door, I thought I was doing you a favor. I thought I was the one with something to offer, shelter, safety, a job. But you gave me so much more. You gave me a reason to wake up in the morning. You gave me a family. You gave me a purpose beyond just existing. You gave me back my life." Sarah took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "We were two broken people who somehow made each other whole." "That's not common, Jack. That's magic." "Yeah," Jack agreed, pulling her close. "It really is. And under the vast Montana sky, with the ranch lights glowing warm behind them and the sound of their children's laughter drifting from the house, Two people who had found each other in the darkest moments of their lives sat together, grateful for every twist of fate that had led them home. The story of the lonely cowboy and the desperate mother became a local legend, told around dinner tables and at community gatherings. But for Jack, Sarah, Emma, and Tyler, it was simply their truth, a reminder that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask for help, and sometimes the greatest gift you can give is saying yes when someone needs you. Their next chapter was just beginning, and it was filled with hope, love, and the quiet certainty that together they could face anything the world threw at them. Because they weren't just a family by chance or circumstance. They were a family by choice, built on mutual respect, hard-won trust, and a love that had grown from the seeds of desperation into something strong and lasting, and that made all the difference.